In the Kink Lazy Boy Green Room with the one and only Steve Earle. Holy cow, this is something special. He's on the way to San Fran from the Big Bumbershoot Festival up there in Seattle, which has turned into quite a thing.
Yeah, it's the first time I played it, but I mean, we played. It was funny. Somebody picked me up at the airport and said, "You played this before?" And I hadn't. It was the first time that we'd done it, but it turned out really good. We had a good show. We actually kind of were the last note of music played there was on our stage, so it was good.
Steve, the last time I saw you were with Kevmo and Jackson Browne.
Right.
So if you could choose any other musicians in the world to go on tour with, to have a good time with, who would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty boring on the road, so people probably think I was a drag on the road. I'm usually asleep before the bus pulls away from the venues. I love touring with Jackson. We're friends, and we have been for a long time.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to do. I've got a bluegrass band that's made up of some guys that make some really great records on their own. You know, Tim O'Brien and Daryl Scott and Casey Dreesen, and I like touring with those guys. I like touring with my wife. We spent a lot of time in the last 2 years trying to sync up our tour.
Yeah.
I
like touring with her too.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that we literally, my record, we had 2 records being made simultaneously in our household, which was not easy, but we did it, and the reason was just trying to get to where, I'm doing some radio and stuff and television, but I won't start touring in earnest till January when her record comes out, so we can tour together. And that's not marketing. That's about staying married.
Hey, how does your touring schedule interact with your Wired schedule?
It was a nightmare. I mean, it was one reason I wasn't in the second and third seasons. I was in the first season, and they wrote the part was supposed to extend into the second and third season, but by that time I made Jerusalem and The Revolution Starts Now one record right after the other because I was responding to what was going on in the world on those 2 records, and I had definite ideas about when I wanted them out, and it was just too hard on David Simon and Ed Burns, the producers and writers, to write me into the show. Then when it started looking like there was going to be a little gap between records, we sort of planned for me to be available for the last season. So I did the last episode of the 4th season to set up for the 5th and final season, and I just shot my last scene in The Wire Forever, which was kind of sad, but it was fun. It was a great experience. It was great writing. I got to go out and say great words every night, which as a writer myself, I learned a lot from doing it.
Was that your first foray into acting?
Yeah, I mean, I'd done one monologue in a stage production, which I thought was going to be easy, but that was the most terrifying experience of my life. I had a theater company for a while in Nashville. It was the first film acting I'd done, and I ended up, I got one call already from something else. I mean, I've done The Wire off and on for 5 years, but I also have a Law and Order Special Victims Unit that I did, that was kind of fun because it was me and Adam Beach and Ice-T, and I got to get in Ice-T's space and recite Tupac.
Because I wonder what guys like you and Little Steven and the like tap into who have never acted before. Because it is so difficult.
Steven's my boss. It's funny because we were trying to have a meeting because he's my boss at my radio gig, and which is it was funny. We tried to put together a meeting for that when I moved radio venues, and because I was doing The Wire and he was finishing The Sopranos, we never actually got together in the same room during the whole process.
I think if I could dream of any neighbor in the world that I'd want to hang out with, it would be Ed Burns. He seems like one of the most brilliant men.
He's a really brilliant guy. He's also, if you watched the show last year, there was this storyline about a cop that sort of was forced into retirement becoming a school teacher in the Baltimore City school system, and that was Ed. That's what he did. He had rendered himself completely politically inert in the Baltimore Police Department, but he figured out that he could go and take any city job and get to a pension of some sort. So he chose being a teacher in the Baltimore City school system, which he thought, when it was all said, that was a lot more dangerous than being a homicide detective in Baltimore. So you guys do.
So I've always been curious, since Ronnie Van Sant gave you some of the best advice you ever received in your life. Did you save the necklace?
Well, this stuff keeps coming up about.
Is it not true?
It's absolutely not true.
You're kidding.
I never met Ronnie Van Sant. I mean, the day that I knew, I was asked to.
Is it an urban legend? You're telling me.
This one I haven't even heard. Don't think that if there was a biography that big about you, you wouldn't read it either. I don't even read my press releases out of my own office.
Yeah, so let me give you the story about the biography, and then tell me if you would have kept the necklace. So you're at a concert, you're like, 21 years old, you're really struggling to make it into the big time, and Ronnie Van Zant says to you, if you work hard and you work your ass off and you really love your music, you're going to be a rock musician. And he gives you a necklace around your chest.
The person, let's understand something. I hate Lynryd Skynyrd, and I always have, and I hate Kiss, and I hate Lynryd Skynyrd. I think two of the most dangerous revisionist ideas in the world is that Kiss is cool and that Lynryd Skynyrd's cool. Kiss was never cool. Lynryd Skynyrd are rednecks, and I know them, and there was a point when we had a common interest in things that didn't have anything to do with
We
music.
can strike this from Wikipedia
absolutely.
today.
There you go.
Today.
No, I remember. I'll never forget the day that those guys got killed in that plane crash. I lived in San Miguel Allende in Mexico, and I was, it was 1977, so I was 22, and I remember I spent the whole day in a panic because somebody walked up to me on the street and said, Townes Van Zandt is dead, and because they heard the name Van Zandt and they knew that Townes and I were friends. I didn't give a damn about Lynryd Skynyrd one way or the other, and I spent 2 days. In those days, it was really hard to make a long-distance telephone call out of Mexico. And you had to go to the larger distancia, and you had to pay money, which I didn't have any, and it took me 3 days to find out that it wasn't Townes that had been killed.
Wow.
You and your wife, Allison Moore, live in New York now. As I understand, you live on a street that's probably particular interest to Bob Dylan fans. You want to talk about that?
I won't talk about what street it is. I mean, you can figure it out for yourself, but it's pretty easy to do, especially if you're one of those dumpster diving Dylan fans. But I live on the street that Dylan's walking and Susie Rotala are walking down the cover of the Free Will and Bob Dylan.
Yeah, classic moment.
I spent a lot of time turning Germans around to get them pointed the right direction to take their pictures in the middle of the street.
Is it Germans that want that more than most?
The two people that I've encountered so far and had to turn around happened to be German. It was one of those things.
So this album is a great tribute to sort of that time and that era when so much fantastic music was made. And I hope this quote is attributed to you, that you said it was when lyrics actually became important. And, I guess I've never really recognized.
That was actually Ronnie Van Zant.
Yeah, because he said, I hope the young will remember. I mean, come on.
But was there actually kind of an awakening for you that you were like, damn, now lyrics are important. This is where I come in.
Well, yeah, it was also the fact that my dad wouldn't let me have an electric guitar. I wanted to sound like Jimi Hendrix, but I couldn't so much because I had an acoustic guitar and I couldn't make my guitar sound like that. And I was too young when I started playing to play places that served liquor, so that meant coffee houses, and the Vietnam War was going on. It was a really politically charged atmosphere, and it meant that I listened to Tom Paxton and Tom Rush, and in Texas I knew Townes Van Zandt, and by that time Jerry Jeff Walker had moved back there, and who was actually part of that scene in the Village towards the end of it, and it was just it was one of those things that I think that. What that period did is, I think it elevated rock and roll to an art form. I think lyrics becoming important. When John Lennon wrote "You Gotta Hide Your Love Away," he was trying to be Bob Dylan. He knew that what was going on there was important. But it's one of those things. Tom Paxton and Dylan were the two guys that first started writing songs, and Dave Van Ronk sort of nails it down to those two guys. They were the first two guys that started taking, the form of folk songs, these songs that were handed down from generation to generation, and writing their own songs in that style.
Who do you like that's coming up? Who's doing the same thing?
Willie Mason.
Really? Yeah,
he's really great, and he's mainly because he comes from a new. I love Conor Oberst. There's a lot of people I think that are doing that are writing really good songs. I love the Kings of Leon because they have songs. The first record had really great songs. They were still, and then we were hearing them learn to play their instruments, but now they've learned to play their instruments and they still write great songs.
Very cool.
We've been talking to Steve Earle. The new album is called Washington Square Serenade. It comes out September 25th. A pleasure, Steve.
Thanks,
Thank you so much
Steve.
for hanging out with us in the Lazy Boy Kink Green Room.